Shift happens, and it happened to Coloradans' political party affiliations after the Capitol insurrection. A mayor who promoted QAnon, affiliated with groups threatening public health workers and journalists, and whose political organization created a militia, tells me he's made some mistakes. Colorado's vaccination rate keeps on creeping on, while we have great news on hospitalizations. And a personal story about the personal kindness of a legendary radio voice who signed off in Denver this morning. All that is next. Thousands of Coloradans decided they had seen enough, had enough of their political party, leaving the Republican Party following the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger collected and analyzed the numbers to see what kind of shift happened.
Trying to figure out how many people switched political parties following the Capitol riot on January 6th proved to be more difficult than it sounds. We requested voter registration data from Colorado's Secretary of State's office. We were given more than 4 million voter records from January 4th, 2 days before the insurrection. And we were given more than 4 million voter records from January 12th, 6 days after the siege. We looked at all voters who changed party affiliation after January 6th. Here's what we found. 4,577 registered Republicans in Colorado changed their party affiliation to something else as of January 6th, the day of the riot. 90% of them, more than 4,100, changed to unaffiliated. 4%, 201, went from Republican to Democrat. The next popular choice was Libertarian, with others joining the American Constitution Party, Unity Party, Approval Voting Party, and the Green Party. 54 of Colorado's 64 counties saw Republicans change their voter registration. Douglas County had the most, with 759 Republicans making a change. 580 Republicans in Arapahoe County are now registered as something else. 519 in Jefferson County, 441 in Larimer, and 348 in Weld. El Paso County, which is a Republican stronghold, saw just 5 Republicans change to unaffiliated. Garfield County, where Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert is from, had 42 Republicans leave the party. There were more people besides Republicans who changed their voter registration from January 6th to January 12th. 6,300 total, just 7 out of 10 were Republican. Now, I know John, Bob, Wendy, you're out there. I saw your names on the list. So if you change your voter registration, Marshall at 9news.com. I want to hear from you about why. Otherwise, I'm going to start cold calling people tomorrow.
You know, Marshall, there was one name that jumped out at me. I didn't look at the list, but she came out and said something publicly, which was Jenna Stapleton, the wife of the last GOP gubernatorial candidate, Walker Stapleton, who said, she told our partners in Colorado politics that when she heard the whole hang Mike Pence chant, that she was just like, nah, I'm done. I'm out of here.
And what's interesting, she's not in that database because that was as of, I believe, January 13th, and my database only goes to January 12th. So that was just the 1 week after. And so we have 13 more days that I haven't seen yet. That the number could be more, but that's pretty drastic. That number, I don't have anything to compare it to. I haven't looked at previous years after elections, but that's got to be a pretty large number of voter registration changes.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting political landscape in Colorado. Big hole for the GOP to dig out of at the lowest point of power for them since pre-World War II. Marshall, thank you very much. The state came out and said today that when it comes to COVID-19 vaccines, we could be giving out 3 to 4 times the number each day that we're currently administering. But the supply is just not there. The state's also acknowledging there are clear communication issues in letting people who are 70 plus know that they can come in and get a shot now. The state wants to get that group completely taken care of by the end of February. There's a new vaccine hotline for all of your many questions, and we know you have them. It's a call center with 50 people working from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. weekdays, 9 to 5 over the weekend. I apologize. I didn't write down the number in the story, so I'm just going to stare at the screen and read it aloud to folks. It is 877-268-2926. I should have written it down, and that would have been a lot smoother, but I failed to do that. 6.4% of Coloradans have had their first shot. That is 372,000 people. An additional 82,000 and change have gotten both doses of their vaccine. Great news on hospitalizations. There are currently 644 Coloradans hospitalized with COVID-19. That is down 52 patients from the day before. That's a really big one-day jump. And our overall total in the hospital is the lowest since the end of October. This time last week, we were looking at 780 COVID patients. Our positivity rate jumped up a bit over the weekend to 6.7%, brings our weekly average for tests coming back positive back up over 5%, 5.2%. Boy, we got it under 5%. Like, just did it for a second. And under 5% is when the World Health Organization considers the spread of the virus in the community to be under control. Colorado added a bit more than 1,000 new cases of COVID yesterday. Over the last week, we've been averaging a bit more than 1,500, so we'd love to see that trend line hold as well. Our daily case counts haven't been this low since October. We've seen a clear drop-off in the rate of deaths. A reminder, this is our least precise and least timely statistic because deaths are not always reported to the state until days or weeks later. So the graph will always look like it's falling off on the right side, and we know that's not true. So we look back a couple weeks for the most accurate number. 2 weeks ago, we were seeing 25 deaths per day from COVID-19, and that death rate had been cut more than in half from our all-time peak in December. RTD finds itself between a track and a hard place. The hard place is Longmont, and whether RTD can keep its pledge to turn tax dollars from people up there into a train to Longmont. Governor says he wants it done in 4 years. RTD was thinking like 30 years, if at all. The transit agency's leaders told our Steve Steger maybe instead of a train, they could offer an apology and a new plan.
It's the 2004 promise that continues to haunt RTD. Last week, the new CEO, Deborah Johnson, made news when she questioned whether the expensive train to Longmont and Boulder, promised with the tax increase in 2004, is the right option right now as RTD continues to struggle financially. Democratic Governor Jared Polis apparently watched the news because he wrote her this 2-page letter days later. Quote, "I write to remind you of RTD's responsibility of fulfilling their obligations to the taxpayers of the district," Polis wrote, sending along the Fast Tracks ballot language and the map of where it promised service. And Polis set a deadline. RTD is to complete the corridor by 2025, 25 years earlier than the agency's current estimate.
That's an interesting deadline. I don't know if I can say if it's possible.
While RTD made this promise when it went to the voters in 2004, a lot has changed since. The recession set the agency back. Other projects cost more, and the estimated cost of this train skyrocketed from about $500 million early on to about $1.5 billion now. RTD has less than 10% of that estimated cost in the bank.
I think that is unfair to the folks of Longmont. That is unfair to the folks of Boulder to keep pushing that out to avoid having tough conversations.
Board members like Denver's Chantel Lewis say they can't realistically see the agency making the governor's deadline, and she says he's going about this the wrong way.
It wasn't an invitation to a conversation to collectively come up with a solution or an alternative.
Lewis would rather sit down with the stakeholders, apologize for RTD's shortcomings, and just have the difficult conversation to figure out a new way forward.
How much longer do we avoid the conversation, right? Like, we can't. Like, today is the day. We should have done it 2 years ago, a year ago. We need to have this a true, honest conversation.
In a statement directed at the governor, the new CEO says she's very aware of the commitment made to the taxpayers. She's also very aware of the financial situation, and she's open to a conversation about how to best serve all the people in that area. Now, the new RTD board director from Boulder and Longmont, I got in touch with him today. He sent me a statement saying that he's still kind of learning the ins and outs of what's holding up this process, but he also believes this was a commitment made to the taxpayers and that RTD needs to work with local, state, and the federal government to try to figure out some sort of funding mechanism and make this happen, Kyle.
Well, you can't ride an apology to and from work, but if you're not going to get a train, an apology is something. I mean, Director Lewis kind of made me laugh with what she said. You know, the governor strolling in and going, build the train in the next 4 years with the money you don't have is not precisely an invitation to conversation. You know what I mean? That's a fist on the table as opposed to, wow, how do we figure out this really tricky situation?
No, and in 4 years, the problem is the money's not there. RTD's been socking away money into this savings account to try to save for this for a while. They're at about $120 million now. The price tag of that train is $1.5 billion. And at this rate, they're putting away I think they're expected to put away about $17 million next year. They're not going to get close to that. So the question is, like, yeah, it's a great idea to build a train in 4 years. I asked the governor's office, by the way, like, what do you expect to be able to give them to make this happen? Haven't heard anything back quite yet. But the idea is you just don't have the funding yet to build that train in 4 years. Maybe you could do it with a little bit more time.
All right. Not our last discussion about the train to Longmont. Steve, thank you. I gotta say, I'm astonished at what you all did for the tiny town of Branson, Colorado, way down on the southern border. You raised almost $80,000 to help them build their new football field and community gathering spot there in Los Animas County. We told you how the other football teams didn't want to come in and play on their rock-hard pasture land field, and how Branson, the couple dozen people there, were raising money, some real serious money for a small community. They'd come up with about $160,000 on their own. And then all of you fine people came in with another $80,000 since the middle of last week through your Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign. The folks down in Branson are so appreciative. They're just floored by this. They're going to look for grants and other stuff to take them the rest of the way. This is going to happen. I am confident that we are going to take you down to Branson, Colorado, some future fall evening for a football game, and every single one of you can say, had a part in building Branson's dream. Rick Crandall's voice is leaving radio. His legacy, though, extends well beyond the airwaves. The mayor, who promoted QAnon and joined a group threatening public health workers, says those were mistakes.
I have never believed in stuff like that, and I would never believe in stuff like that.
I'll also ask him about the militia his political group created. That's next. QAnon conspiracy theorists were front and center during the storming of the U.S. Capitol. And the mayor of Parker told me today that he made a mistake recently in sharing QAnon propaganda online. Mayor Jeff Toborg told me he was also mistaken when he recently joined an online group threatening public health workers by publishing their home addresses on the internet. I spoke with Mayor Toborg today about his connection to a number of fringe groups.
Let me just go on record, Kyle, as saying I denounce any violence of this type. You know, people cannot be made to feel unsafe or be made unsafe in their own home simply for the job they do.
So this is not the first time that you have aligned yourself with an effort to threaten Coloradans for doing their jobs. You're on the board of directors of a political group called FEC United, and you were present at a rally in October where the founder of FEC United, Joe Oltmann, spoke just minutes before you. You then spoke calling him Parker's favorite son. One of the things he said when he spoke was to threaten journalists who report on the political group that you sit on the board of. Oltmann said, "We're coming for you," talking about journalists. He said, "If you're part of the media and you write something bad about us, better take your byline off of it."
Right. So let me clarify some facts on that. I left FEC in August, September timeframe to run for mayor. I supported FEC in its original intent to help encourage churches, schools, and commerce to be reopened. By the time I was there, I was a mayoral candidate. I was no longer a part of that board.
You were present at the event. You spoke following the founder after he threatened journalists, and you complimented him. And my question is, why do you continue to associate yourself with extremist groups that threaten Coloradans for doing their jobs?
I recall saying that he's a favorite son of Parker because of his business here. But Kyle, I have no affiliations with extremist groups.
So FEC is also building a sort of militia, the United American Defense Force, with the goal to, quote, defend and protect what is ours. As mayor of Parker, would you invite your former group's militia to operate within your town?
No, absolutely not. Kyle, and the Defense Force was a separate part of FEC.
So I'm trying to get this straight. So you're saying that even though you were on the board of directors of this political group that created a militia, you're not responsible for creating a militia?
Kyle, the piece that I was in had no part of the militia. We were FEC, which stood for Faith, Education, and Commerce. I had no part in the militia.
From the post that you put up about QAnon that you said you were not really aware of. You've also promoted the baseless conspiracy theories that the election was rigged and questioned the safety of the COVID vaccine, signed on to that group to dox public health workers, which you said you didn't know about, and then you were a board member and spoke at this rally where journalists were threatened by this group that also has a militia arm. Do you believe that your own actions qualify you as an extremist?
No, absolutely not.
Are you extremist curious?
No.
You can find my full conversation with Parker Mayor Jeff Towark on the next YouTube channel. One last show this morning ended a 30-year run for an icon of radio in Denver. Man who did a lot of good for this community away from the microphone as well. Another family has a tradition it will not allow to fall victim to the pandemic. We say cheers to that next. Swing your radio dial by 14:30 a.m. in the morning and you would hear the voice of Rick Crandall. Been that way for more than 30 years until this morning. Rick Crandall did his final show for KZW today. He said Intercom, which owns the station, is going to change up the format. He was clear to say he's not upset about this. There's just really nowhere for him to fit in, so it's time for him to go. He posted photos from his final show in the booth today. One last look at the studio door as he left. Rick Crandall plans to continue his work for Colorado's veterans. You have seen him on Next a number of times over the years, talking about one project in particular, the Colorado Freedom Memorial in Aurora, which he founded. Folks, we're talking about a good man who has poured his heart into honoring his fellow vets in Colorado. I'll tell you one story. So years back, when we reported on a hero without a hometown, a migrant worker born in Colorado who went off to war and was killed in Korea, a posthumous Medal of Honor recipient. When we uncovered that story, it was Rick Crandall who made certain that Joe Baldonado's name was added to the memorial in Aurora alongside the names of every other Coloradan lost in war. I cannot tell you what it meant to the Baldonado family to come into town and to see Joe honored somewhere other than in their own memories. Rick Crandall is the man who did that, and will keep doing things like that, even now that his legendary radio career is over.
Cloudy and cold. We remain between two storm systems, one exiting tonight, another on the way tomorrow morning, and that means additional light snow in the 1 to 2 inch range. And the cold air is really going to settle in. Today's high at 33 is 10 degrees cooler than average. Tomorrow will be in the 20s. Snow showers will increase from the southwest tonight. Denver, again, about an inch and a half possible as we move through Tuesday afternoon. Not a huge storm for us, but we certainly do need the moisture. And so tonight, no advisories for snow, but light snow expected overnight with a cold low of 18. Tomorrow, cloudy with a high of 27, a bit of light snow, clearing in the late daytime period and a low of 11. And then a nice midweek warming trend, mid-40s on Wednesday and then close to 60 by the end of the week. Dry weather heading into next weekend and through next Monday.
Metro area has just had a crispy, dry winter so far. You know, of course, we need the snowfall, and that meteorologist Corey Reppenhagen needs the excitement in his life. The chance to combine his two biggest passions, weather and poetry.
Corey Reppenhagen is on the Weather Beat.
Could this be winter? A tamer version of it. Snow on the prairie.
That was Corey Reppenhagen on the Weather Beat.
He finally got some of that weather he loves out on the eastern plains. It's weird, it almost looked like a fake shot, I promise you it was not. A family decided to keep its stock show tradition without a stock show this year. It's the most Colorado thing we saw today, and it's next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is a family keeping their January tradition alive. Every year, the Cook family goes to the Brown Palace for tea with the National Western Stock Show Grand Champion steer. No such party this year, so they created their own tea with their own stuffed steer. We'll see you next time.